So Grant, can you tell me a little bit who you are and why are you stepping into this moment right now?
Well, Fred, good question. I just think in relation to what I'm doing in Canada right now, there's a lot of problems, and I find myself being someone who crossed the line in terms of being frustrated and fed up, and have just stepped up. And I think that's probably the beginning of the answer for me in terms of why I'm here. Who am I? Well, I'm a dad of four boys. I'm a happily married man. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm born in Alberta. And I've been watching the erosion of the Canada that I grew up in and that I love. And I'm also truly a conservative person who grew up in the development of the Conservative Party, right from the Progressive Conservative Party, when progressive was a good word, to Reform, to the Alliance, to our new federal Conservatives. But I've seen the party leave the people that are conservative in this nation. And I think that's probably ultimately why I'm here, because there are things that should be being conserved in this nation that aren't. And we can talk about that in terms of trade. We can talk about it in terms of national security. We can talk about it in relation to the family. We can talk about it in relation to the sanctity of life. Whatever the context is, nothing is being conserved. And so therefore, when that's the case and the people have those values, it requires someone to stand up, and I'm standing up to have these conversations.
And what do you think the people in Battle River Crowfoot riding, what are they hungry for?
I think all of Canada. It's true. I am right now on the ballot in the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. It's July 2025, and I think Canadians are sick of political platitudes, and they want to have the truth spoken to them. And really, that is where my platform and the development of this party has started, is where I started to speak truth to Canadians about what was really going on behind the government's response to COVID. And I started to connect the dots in relation to what Justin Trudeau was saying in relation to Canada becoming the first post-nation state, and that COVID had provided us with an opportunity for a reset. I was shocked that there were no conservatives asking those questions, because those would have been obvious things to ask from an opposition party that wanted to attain power, and actually ultimately serve the people. And I'm still the only conservative thinker asking those questions in the public space, and so many of the problems that we have in Canada right now are because the Conservatives aren't doing what they should be doing as the opposition. And indeed, that's why they continue to lose elections, because they're continuing to race left. They can't win the race against the Liberals going left.
So what do you think the people are looking for you to do as a leader?
Well, I find that, probably because this riding is so staunchly conservative, at the outset, they're not looking for me to do anything, because they probably still believe in so many ways that the Conservative Party is the solution, or at least they've been groomed. We all have been in Western Canada groomed to believe the Conservative Party is our solution. In fact, I say grooming now facetiously, because in some ways, retroactively, that's what it is. Because we've always relied on the Conservative Party to defend our interests in the West or in Alberta or whatever. But this departure from our values is now clashing and clanging with what we're actually feeling as Canadians, because the party has left the people.
So that's a kind of a cultural crisis. It's a frame of mind crisis. What opportunities do you see to go beyond this and into a better space?
Well, again, I think maybe this is part of the last question that you just asked that I probably didn't finish as thoroughly as I could have, which is people are yearning to hear that there's anxiety. There's kind of a tacit anxiety in people right now. They have a sense of things that are looming or bad things coming. And it's true. There are bad things coming in this country because our economy isn't growing. In fact, our dollar's lost nearly 50% of its spending power in the last 3 years. We're passing legislation that is giving the government incredibly far-reaching tyrannical control. And people are sick, actually, of just the BS. They're sick of being told, on one hand, we're going to unleash Alberta energy, and then on the other hand, they see Mr. Poilievre being asked, will you leave the Paris Climate Accord, UN Paris Climate Accord, and the answer is unclear. And so how do you both respect this climate change agenda and restricting carbon and also liberate Alberta energy? And people are catching on to these inconsistencies. So when someone shows up who is from the province and is one of the people here, then and starts to talk about these issues, people go, hey, you know what, you're right. And there's a hey, you know what, you're right about a lot of different things across this nation that we're talking about, and people are seeing that, and it's starting to make sense. And yeah, so I'm hopeful about this riding because it continues to see basically a descaling and blind spots being stopped.
So it's a conundrum because what you're describing is an oxymoron. People know that they can't keep going on like this. They hope for the best, but a lot of people are moving over to talking about getting out of the province if they can. How do you look at that given all the legislation in place, and what realities do you think we can actually do to deal with this issue conclusively?
Well, I think that people can't really have a conversation seriously about Alberta independence without understanding the nature of the threat that is facing Albertans. I think we would have seen here, and a lot of people would agree, I believe, that in the last, 2 or 3 months, we've heard President Trump say, sort out your stuff or you'll become a 51st state. In some ways, if you follow the chronology of what's going on in Western Canada, that became a kind of a catalyst statement that really fueled the independence movement. Right. But I think we've seen, and my own view is that most of the people that I'm talking to don't want to become Americans. What they want to do is not live under the tyranny or the subjugation, if you will, of Ottawa over Alberta.
Sure.
And so that leaves us in this space where we have all these words that we talk about in Alberta, like sovereignty and independence and separation. And sovereignty in particularly is used to, I think, in many ways gaslight, because we hear it being used of talking about Alberta sovereignty, but within Canada. And I think most Albertans who are of an age believe or have seen that kind of sovereignty, the sovereignty that the Albertan soul actually yearns for, isn't going to come within the broken Canada that we've seen in the last 5 years.
It's
right?
What kind of a Canada?
Right. So we don't want to be Americans. We do want our freedom and independence, but we don't believe that the broken Canadian system can actually produce the kind of sovereign freedom inside the broken Canada that exists right now. And so I think this is where I find myself, because that's exactly what I think. I think that Alberta needs to become independent, but that does not mean that I think that Albertans wish to be a separate nation, alone and selfish. I think that their ultimate wish is to stop being abused. And I think there's also seeds of benevolence in the Albertan spirit, which is, if there is a just and righteous government, I mean, I always use the term righteous, and I define it as making the crooked straight. If there was that kind of Canada or the government that we could establish in Alberta, we'd be saying to the rest of the country, hey, you know what? We are a new nation. We are a constitutional republic. We are a nation that has set inalienable rights in place, meaning rights that cannot be modified by the whim of courts, like we've seen with our Supreme Court and the activism of it. And if you want to join, you join under these terms.
So straighten up, Canada.
Straighten up, Canada. We're actually birthing a new Canada. And this is ultimately the discussion, I think, that's coming in the West and in Canada of the two Canadas. And in some ways, you know, I have a copy of my book suspiciously sitting here for our interview.
Imagine.
And I'm talking about the battle for the soul of Canada. And I think probably that was written in 2023. And I think if I write a new book, it's going to be on this actual confrontation between the two Canadas, because what's happening is the Canadian people are being left hoodwinked with the same flag flying, but their nation is being rewired onto some other kind of wiring system philosophically than we understand. We know what that wiring is.
It's a post-national fence post.
It's post-nationalism with a healthy dollop of Marxism and fascist ideology, and we don't want it. And that's the change of the social contract in our nation.
So how can everyday people reclaim our voice and our strength in that process? How do you offer to help them?
Well, I just think that blind spots or awareness or this, one of the things about COVID that I found was so interesting is that people knew that there was something wrong, but they weren't necessarily connecting the dots on what it was. Mm-hmm. And that's part of that problem is in Canada is that we talk about symptoms rather than root issues. And so if you only ever talk about symptoms, you never actually get to the root of what it is wrong and can fix it. And so I think my job has been to bring forward the dot connecting root indicators, the revelation of the root issues, so people can go, oh, I'm not crazy. What I'm feeling is actually is what's going on, and I do need to look deeper, and they almost feel validated the fact that they, someone else is saying what it is that they're feeling.
Yeah, to add my point of view, that I see a lot of help in a legitimate process of renewing Canada that works for every area, whether it's municipal or provincial.
Yeah.
We do not have a legitimate case to be oppressed like the way we are, and it is right for us to reform ourselves.
Absolutely correct. And the reason that there's this wholesale transformation of the nation so well is because every level of our government has been targeted with a radical transformation. And I think that is exactly what's happening with Agenda 2030 and the umbrella ideology of post-nationalism. And post-nationalism doesn't equate very well. I hear people in Alberta kind of referring to it as, a WEF agenda, which is what it actually is. And I think it's a good term to define it. But post-nationalism means we stop becoming a nation and actually become a subset of some collective international organization where our laws are made somewhere else, and the people that govern us aren't accountable to us.
Like a primitive colony of 150 years ago.
It is. It absolutely is. And what that means, though, this isn't just some kind of interesting political experiment. It comes to the front door of every house in this nation, because it means that things like terms like ownership and property and wealth and your actual control of your assets are suddenly being undermined and taken or redefined in a way that the new definition means something very differently than what the promise of Canada has been and been breathed into generations of Canadians. And that is the deception. That is the treason.
It is. The treason of what we promised that we would be in return for being a country. Standing up, what does that look like to you? Because we talk, we protest, we've tried lots of things all over the country in 1,000 ways for the last 4 or 5 years. What does standing up look like to you?
Well, I think that Canadians live in a little bit of a sleepy bubble because the world is watching what's going on here, and we need to realize that we're in a geopolitical situation right now. We have massive resources and wealth. I think the calculated assets of Alberta that aren't on the balance sheet of Alberta is $21 trillion. That in itself is an amazing hoard for any foreign government that needs clean soil or energy or clean water to be interested in, and that's just Alberta. And when we see the geopolitical interests that are at play in this country, when we look at the issues of foreign interference and how we just went through a general election, and we had 11 federal MPs who were either under the influence of foreign governments or agents of foreign governments, but we can't be told. We know that our country is vulnerable, and I feel personally like Canada right now has actually tipped. It's lost its ability to actually stay standing up, but it just hasn't toppled over yet. And these are geopolitical realities, whether it's economic. I think President Trump is a very good weather vane in terms of indicating for us what is actually being observed out there. He's saying to us, basically, when he says you'll become a 51st state, he's basically saying to Canadians, you are not going to become a post-nation state at our northern border because we're not prepared to have our continental security be compromised with your guys's laziness. So go ahead with your question.
Every Canadian has perhaps the duty to stand up in some way. I've seen it in business, in politics. You see this creeping insurgency from other interests that are neither true nor national. I can stand up in my own way, but collectively, how would you say that we become stronger to actually unite and stand up?
I think this by-election in Battle River is the front line of this war
at the
right
moment
now.
It is, yeah.
And this is not just an issue for the 120,000 people that live in Battle River Crowfoot.
Right.
This is something that is of national interest. This is something that is of interest to the free people of the world, because right now this is actually a fight between the culture, values, and traditions that we know and love as Canadians, and the globalist tyranny that's overarching our nation.
I would even add, as humans.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. It's that visceral, and I think how do we stand up? We stand up for the truth. It's not for Grant Abraham. It's standing up for the truth. It's standing up for justice. It's standing up for removing the crookedness that's undermining our nation. And that is what I'm saying. But people need to stand up for those issues. And if I happen to be placed here right now in a position in an election to actually confront those issues, that's incidental to the fact that the people of this nation need to see this as the front line of this battle and stand up. And I actually think if there's ever a time to show support and have another convoy or a convoy-esque kind of support from free Canadians against what's going on, it's now.
Right.
I think the jury's out on Danielle Smith in terms of her moving towards, she's made some good steps towards implementing a referendum for true freedom for Albertans. And I think that convoy should be supporting those steps that she's taking in relation to moving us towards this referendum. This is something that the Alberta Prosperity Project is also advocating for. And these are people that are standing up for true freedom, and we need to be gathering around them and supporting them. And I think there's other things going on in this country right now. There's the sentencing of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. And for people who are facing, we'll see what the sentencing is next week.
I might add justice to the backs injured and
so
much.
There's a whole bus full of issues, but right now we've got two people who were kind of at the front of a peaceful protest in Ottawa who are finishing the punishment is the process exercise of moving through our courts. and are potentially facing between 2 and 10 years in prison. And I don't see that they burnt anything or robbed anything or raped anybody or hit anybody. They just happen to be doing some press conferences talking about the overreach of our government and the breaching of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Exactly.
And Canadians should be mad about that. Yeah. You know, it's easy to slide into summer and just go to Costco and go to Mexico or play golf or whatever, but we had a bus driven through the very freedoms that our grandparents fought and died for, and that we established as principles that would never be violated again by our own government. Right. And actually the Conservative Party of Canada walked through standing up for those issues. You know, brought some donuts and coffee to the convoy.
Seemingly deliberately.
So, you know, there is an indignation, and I think people need to feel that again, because Mark Carney is only going to make this worse. Right. He is here to conclude the transaction of post-nationalism for this nation. And you know what? We're already looking at bills right now in the form of Bill C-2 that allows the government to read your mail, electronic or physical mail, without a warrant. There's a restriction. The first restriction's coming on cash in this country, so that it's illegal to use anything over $10,000. So that's a massive curtailment of the movement of cash, and they don't allow you just to pay. You know, it's pretty carefully crafted. So it's not, if a bill's $15,000, you just can't do $5,000 installments. Yeah. So these are our liberty curtailments, and if you look back to the ice storm in Texas a few years ago, when the electricity went out, no one could use Interact or the internet. So our government's telling us if they don't lose control of the energy grid, you can't spend more than 10 grand to feed or clothe your family. Right? Like, starts to become an issue.
Survival issue, yeah.
That's a bit of a stretch in terms of interpretation of that actual law, but where's the electronic transfers? There won't be any.
The mechanisms are all in place, and people know that. They don't like it. They don't know quite what to do about it.
So standing up means recognizing the threats to this nation and getting behind the people that have actually stood up. And I actually think it's time for all of Canada to stand up again, because this Battle River Crowfoot riding is sure big enough to take on a peaceful demonstration, and we need to wake the people up in Battle River Crowfoot to say that if we keep just voting for the Conservative Party the way that we always do, we're going to end up in the same mess and continued quagmire in this country, because what the Liberals are doing, the Conservative Party is enabling by inactivity, by omission. And they are the greatest threat to this nation, because at least we know that Mark Carney is an unhelpful tyrant.
Sure. And I'm personally challenged just by the standard of truth. That how is that working in my life? How is that working in my family's life, in my community? I'm involved in municipal activism to just reinstate the paradigm that it is our job and our duty to walk towards truth, aspiring to be in the light, and to be what Canadians are meant to be, not just to tolerate being ruled like slaves. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Grant.
Yeah. You're very welcome. It's good to get together and have a chat. And I think, again, we got to remind everyone that this conversation doesn't just apply to federal politics. The threats to this nation are creeping at every level. And I think the municipal discussion is as significant and as important, and it's a part of this war. And how it's fought is maybe a little slightly more nuanced and different, but it's the same tension.
And provincially, you could apply that as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.